In this video, we're going to review torque and rotational dynamics. We're going to first define a rigid system. So this is a system that holds its shape in which different points on the system move in different directions. So here is a disk that is rotating on the left-hand side, might be moving down, but on the right-hand side might be moving up. In a rigid system, all points within that system have the same angular velocity and the same angular acceleration. Angular displacement is the angle through which the object rotates. The symbol for angle is theta. Delta theta, the change in the angle or the angular displacement, is equal to the final angle minus the initial angle. And the linear analog or the linear version of this is displacement. Displacement is final position minus initial position. The direction, the positive direction is for rotation is arbitrary, but generally speaking, counterclockwise often is positive and clockwise is negative. The unit for angles is radians. We can also measure degrees, but when we're working with rotation, we're often going to be using radians. Now, when an angle is measured in radians, it's defined as the arc length divided by the radius. And let's take a look at an example. Let's take a look at a full rotation. So let's say you were to rotate one full rotation. The circumference would be 2 pi r. The radius here is r. Notice that the r's cancel out. So theta, the angle in radians, is 2 pi rad, 2 pi radians. So 360 degrees is equivalent to 2 pi rad. This means that pi rad would be equivalent to 180 degrees. Angular velocity is the rate of change of angular displacement. The unit for angular velocity is radians per second, and the symbol for angular velocity is omega. The average angular velocity is equal to the angular displacement divided by the time. The linear version of this is average velocity, which is equal to displacement divided by time. The angular acceleration is the rate of change of the angular velocity. The unit is radians per second squared. The symbol for angular acceleration is alpha. The average angular acceleration is equal to the change in angular velocity divided by the time. The linear version of this is average acceleration, which is equal to the change in velocity divided by time. Now we're going to review rotational kinematic equations. And I'd like you to compare the rotational kinematic equations with the linear kinematic equations. Do you notice the similarities? Do you notice that linear motion, we have velocity, rotational motion, we have angular velocity. For linear motion, we have acceleration. For rotational motion, we have angular acceleration. And for linear motion, we have displacement. For rotational motion, we have angular displacement. And so notice the similarities. That's going to help you to figure out how to use these equations. Now let's take a look at an example. We have a wheel that's rotating. It's starting from rest and has an angular acceleration of 2.5 radians per second. It rotates 4 seconds. And we want to find out what is the final angular velocity. So we're going to use our rotational kinematic equation, omega f equals omega I plus alpha times t. We're going to substitute our known variables and solve, and we get 10 radians per second. It's going to be counterclockwise. Now we're going to take a look at motion graphs, and it's helpful to compare rotational motion graphs and linear motion graphs since we already know some things about linear motion graphs. Just a quick review. The slope on a position versus time graph tells us the velocity. The slope on a velocity time graph tells us the acceleration. And that works the same for rotational motion graphs. So the slope of the angle versus time graph tells us the angular velocity. The slope of the angular velocity time graph tells us the angular acceleration. Now, we can also go the other way. So the area under the curve of a acceleration time graph tells us the change in velocity, and the area under a velocity time graph tells us the displacement. For rotational version, the area under an angular acceleration time graph tells us the change in angular velocity. The area under a angular velocity time graph tells us the angular displacement. Now remember that these areas can be positive or they can be negative. And so the change could be a positive change or a negative change. And now we're going to take a look at bridge equations. And these are equations that help us to connect between rotational motion to linear motion. So let's say that you know the angle of your rotation. If you take the angle of your rotation, you can calculate the arc length. And to do that, you take theta times how far away you are from the axis of rotation, and we can call that r. If we take theta times r, we get the arc length. And notice that the further away you are from the axis of rotation, the bigger the arc length is. If you know the angular velocity, we can calculate the linear velocity by taking the angular velocity times the distance you are from the axis of rotation, or we can call it r. And you notice that the farther away you are from the axis of rotation, as you move further and further away, you'll notice that the linear velocity gets bigger and bigger, and that's because you're going around a bigger circle the further away you are from the axis of rotation. If you know the angular acceleration, you can calculate the tangential acceleration. Now, you want to be real careful that this is not the centripetal acceleration. This is the tangential acceleration. The centripetal is pointing towards the center of the circle. This is the tangential acceleration. And the tangential acceleration is the angular acceleration times the distance you are from the axis of rotation, or we can call it r. And notice that as the farther you get from the axis of rotation, the larger the tangential acceleration. Next, we're going to take a look at torque. Torque, I like to think of it as a twisting force, but I want to be careful and be clear that it is not a force, because force is measured in newtons, torque is measured in Newton meters. To calculate torque, we take the r, the radius, times the force perpendicular, or you can calculate it using rf sine theta. So here we have a wrench. We're pushing it with a force of 40 newtons at an angle of 70 degrees. It is the force is 0.5 meters away from the axis of rotation. So we can calculate the torque by taking the r, 0.5, times the force 40 newtons times sine theta, and theta is 70 degrees, and we get 18.8 Newton meters. There's another way to calculate torque, which is to use the lever arm times the force. Here we have the force, and we've drawn a dotted line along it, and we call this the line of action. And here is another dotted line. This we're labeling the lever arm. So the lever arm is a line that goes through the axis of rotation and is perpendicular to the line of action. And if you know the lever arm and you know what the force is, you can multiply those two and get the torque as well. Now we're going to take a look at rotational inertia. Rotational inertia is the measure of an object's resistance to changes in its rotational motion. So something with a lot of rotational inertia, it's going to be harder to get it to start rotating. Something that has a small amount of rotational inertia, it's going to be easier to get it to start rotating. The general equation for rotational inertia is equal to the sum of the mr squared. M is the mass, r is the distance that mass is to the axis of rotation. And you'll notice to have a lot of rotational inertia, you want the mass to be as far away from the axis of rotation as possible. And there are these equation charts, like the one you see here, that helps you to calculate the rotational inertia for various shaped objects. You don't need to memorize these, but just to know that they are there. You'll be given those equations if needed. But for AP Physics 1, you just need to understand that the rotational inertia is equal to the sum of the mr squared. Now let's take a look at some example. So here we have a tightrope walker. Why does a tightrope walker hold a very long pole? So this tightrope walker is taking advantage of the law of physics. Because the pole is very long, the r is big, it's going to have a large rotational inertia, and so the tightrope walker is going to be more stable and less likely to tip over. Here we have the classic hoop and disc race. They both start on the top of the ramp. We release them, we let them go. Which one gets to the bottom first? And every time we do this, the disc wins. And the reason the disc wins is because the disc has less rotational inertia, less resistance to change in its rotational motion. The hoop has more rotational inertia because its mass is further away from the axis of rotation. So it's got a big R with all these mass here, while some of these masses are close to the center, some of them are in the middle, and so this one has less rotational inertia, and therefore the disk wins. Now we're going to take a look at the parallel axis theorem. When we calculated the rotational inertia previously with the equation I provided, that was for a rotational inertia where the axis of rotation is through the center of mass. If the axis for rotation is not through the center of mass, then we have this equation that we can use to calculate the new rotational inertia. The equation is the new rotational inertia is equal to the rotational inertia through the center of mass plus m, the mass of the object, times d, how far away you move the axis of rotation, and that value is squared. So let's use an example of this solid disk. The rotational inertia equation for this solid disk through the center of mass is 1/2 mr squared. The new rotational inertia is going to be equal to 1/2 mr squared plus m, which is the mass of the disk, times d. D is how far away you move the axis of rotation squared. When we do that calculation, we get 0.85 kilogram meter squared. So moving the axis of rotation away from the center of mass will increase the rotational inertia, and it's going to increase by that amount. Now we're going to take a look at equilibrium. So we have both a rotational equilibrium and a translational equilibrium, and they're different but similar. Uh, if the net torque on an object is 0, then the angular velocity will remain constant. And this is analogous to linear motion, where if the net force is equal to 0, all the forces are balanced, then we would expect the velocity to be constant. If the net torque is not equal to 0, let's say it's unbalanced, then the angular velocity would be changing. The analogous version of this linearly is net force. If the net force is not equal to 0, or we can say net force is unbalanced, then we know that the velocity is going to be changing. Now, something can have a rotational equilibrium, okay? So it's kind of rotating at a constant velocity, but it's moving translationally. It can have rotational equilibrium, but not translational equilibrium. It could be, speeding up sideways. Something can also have translational equilibrium. Okay, it could be moving sideways at constant velocity, but it doesn't have rotational equilibrium. It could be rotating faster and faster and faster and faster. Here we're going to compare Newton's second law for rotation and linear motion. So we'll start with linear motion since we're more familiar with that. The acceleration of object is equal to the net force divided by the system mass. For rotational motion, the angular acceleration is going to equal the net torque divided by the system's rotational inertia. Now we're going to work through some rotational motion problems. Here we have a rod. Here is the pivot. The length of the rod is L, 1.2. The mass of the rod is 3 kilograms. The initial angular velocity is 0. We're looking for the angular acceleration. To calculate the angular acceleration, we're going to need to know the net torque as well as the rotational inertia. All the different parts of this rod is exerting a torque on this rod. But instead of calculating the torque exerted by each one of these little particles in here, we can just calculate this torque as if all of the mass were at the center of mass. And since this is a symmetrical rod, the center of mass is just going to be right in the middle. So R is going to be L divided by 2, which is 0.6 meters. The torque is RF sine theta. R, which we just calculated, is 0.6. F is the weight of the rod, mg, so 3 times 9.8, and theta is 90 degrees. That's the angle between the force and the radius vector, and we get 17.64 Newton meters. The rotational inertia, we're going for the rotational inertia, we're going to use this equation, which is given. You don't have to remember this for AP Physics 1, as 1 over 3 ml squared. So using that equation, we calculate that the rotational inertia is 1.44 kilogram meter squared. To calculate the angular acceleration, we're going to use net torque divided by rotational inertia. Notice this looks very similar to A is equal to F net over M, the linear version of it. So it looks very similar. And we substitute our values. We get 12.3 radians per second squared. Now we're going to take a look at a solid disk rolling without slipping problem. Here we have a solid disk rolling down a ramp. There is friction, it is rolling, and our positive direction is down the ramp. X is this way, Y is perpendicular to the X direction. We're given that the mass of the disk is 2 kilograms, the radius of the disk is 0.3 meters, the angle of the ramp is 30 degrees, and we're looking for the acceleration down the ramp. So this is the linear acceleration. We're going to first draw a free body diagram. So we have mg is down, the normal force is perpendicular to the ramp, and friction is going up the ramp. Sometimes on the AP Physics 1 exam, they'll ask you to draw the force at where that force is occurring. And so you'll notice that the friction is between the object and the surface, the normal is between along the surface, or between the surface and the disk, and the mg is starting at the center of mass of the object. I'm going to redraw this because I want to break up mg into its components to write down the force equation for going down the ramp. So mg is this way, and here's the y component, here's the x component. Because the x component is opposite theta, it's going to be mg sine theta. All right, so using Newton's second law along the x-axis, we have net force X equals to ma. The forces in the positive x direction is mg sine theta minus F. The friction is equal to ma. Next, I'm going to look at this disk rotationally. I'm going to use my rotational version of Newton's second law, which is net torque is equal to rotational inertia times alpha. The net torque, the force that's causing the torque here is going to be friction. So friction is causing a torque here. So the torque is RF, or the FR in this, I'm just writing FR, same thing. We have friction times R. And you might wonder, what about the normal force? Since the normal force goes through the axis of rotation, it's not exerting any torque. mg also goes through the axis of rotation, so mg is not exerting any torque. So the only force exerting a torque is going to be friction, equal to rotational inertia. And so we're given that equation would have mr squared. And alpha, here we're going to use one of our bridge equations. So alpha is equal to linear acceleration divided by r. Alpha equals a divided by r. The r's will cancel out, which leaves me with friction is equal to 1 over 2 ma. I'm going to take this and substitute that over here. You'll notice that the m's cancel out. That leaves us with g sine theta minus 1/2 a is equal to a. I'm going to combine the a's. I'm going to solve for the a's. I'm going to substitute 9.8 for g and 30 for theta, and we get that the acceleration is 3.3 meters per second squared. Notice how we combine both linear motion and rotational motion equations to solve this problem.